Welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into, well, a pretty dense book, I have to say.
It is, yeah.
The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek, published in 1944. Um, we're aiming to kind of pull out those key insights, make it a little more accessible for everyone.
Right. I think it's particularly relevant for academics, for obvious reasons, but
Sure.
Hayek was really concerned about the intellectual trends that he saw kind of bubbling up around him at the time.
Oh, interesting.
He saw many of his peers embracing socialist ideals, often without, I think, fully grasping the implications.
So this wasn't just an economic treatise. He was really engaging in a larger kind of intellectual debate.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's more of a warning.
Hmm.
And what makes his perspective so compelling is that, Hayek himself could have actually benefited from a planned economy.
Oh,
He mentions that in the book. His socialist colleagues assumed that he would hold a prominent position in such a system.
wow.
Yet he chose to, challenge the popular narrative at the time.
So he really put his principles where his mouth was.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He was genuinely concerned about the path society was taking.
Okay, so the path to serfdom. What does that even mean?
Well, Hayek's central argument is that the road to serfdom, to totalitarianism, is often paved with good intentions.
Okay.
Those who advocate for, collectivist planning often promise greater freedom and equality. But Hayek argues that those promises often mask a very dangerous potential for tyranny.
I see. But how can a system that's aiming for social justice lead to tyranny? It just seems like such a contradiction.
Well, Hayek's answer, it really lies in the very nature of planning itself.
Okay.
To achieve, the grand goals of social justice, a central planning authority must make countless decisions.
Right.
Decisions about how resources are used, what gets produced, and even what people are allowed to do.
Yeah.
Hayek argues that this level of control inevitably leads to discrimination and the erosion of individual liberty.
So you're saying even if the planner's intentions are good, the realities of planning kind of force them to make choices that end up favoring some groups over others.
Precisely. And that's where his concept of the rule of law comes in.
Uh-huh.
Hayek argues that planning inherently undermines this crucial principle.
Okay.
Instead of everyone being equal under the law, you have certain groups receiving privileges and exemptions based on the planner's, decisions, essentially.
So Hayek is saying that even seemingly benign, like harmless economic policies can have unintended consequences for individual freedom.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway from the book.
Okay.
And he provides this powerful example to illustrate this point. Imagine a planned economy where the government decides to prioritize steel production,
Right?
to boost industrial growth. Sounds reasonable, right?
Yeah, on the surface.
But to achieve this goal, the government would have to divert resources, right,
Yeah.
from other sectors, potentially leading to shortages in, consumer goods, for example.
Yeah, I see. I see.
Suddenly, you have the government making decisions about what people can buy, where they can work, and how they can actually live their lives,
Right.
all in the name of achieving, this particular economic outcome.
So even if the initial goal was purely economic, kind of technical even, the government's actions, they end up having this ripple effect impacting individual choices in ways that they hadn't intended originally.
Exactly. And as planning expands, this interference in individual lives, it just becomes more and more pervasive.
Right.
Hayek argues that economic control inevitably spills over into other areas, shaping culture, shaping values, even shaping people's thoughts.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
It is.
That even seemingly apolitical activities like choosing a career or even pursuing a particular line of research could be subject to the dictates of the plan.
Exactly. In a planned economy, seemingly neutral economic decisions are really laden with value judgments.
Right.
For example, how do you determine fair wages for different professions, right? Yeah. Someone has to decide what each job is worth, and that inherently involves subjective assessments about the value of different contributions to society.
So who gets to be the arbiter of value in a planned economy?
Yeah, it's a recipe for power struggles and ideological clashes.
Right.
And Hayek was deeply concerned about this concentration of power.
Yeah.
He argued that central planning creates this fertile ground for the rise of totalitarian regimes.
Oh, wow.
Where a small group of individuals control nearly every aspect of life.
And he wasn't just theorizing about this, right? He was pointing to historical examples, to actual cases.
Yeah, he highlighted the surprising connection between German socialist thought in the early 20th century and the rise of Nazism. He analyzed the writings of figures like Plenge and Lensch, prominent German intellectuals who were advocating for a fusion of socialism and nationalistic authoritarianism.
It's a stark reminder, I think, that the road to tyranny can indeed be paved with good intentions. It seems like Hayek is urging us to look beyond just the surface rhetoric and to really consider the long-term consequences of these collectivist policies.
Absolutely. His work is really a call for intellectual honesty.
Right.
And a reminder that even the most well-intentioned policies can have unintended consequences that end up eroding individual liberty.
Hayek's warning goes beyond just the economic sphere, right?
That does.
He also explores the impact of totalitarian systems on the pursuit of truth.
Yes.
Arguing that the control of information and the suppression of dissent really create a very dangerous climate of cynicism and intellectual stagnation.
Yeah, and this is where we see the truly insidious nature of these totalitarian regimes.
Right.
They don't just want to control your actions, they want to control your thoughts.
Right.
Hayek shows how even seemingly apolitical fields like math and science can become targets of this ideological control.
Wow.
Where theories are judged not on their merits, but on how well they serve the interests of the state.
So a world where truth is dictated by those in power.
That's right.
But Hayek didn't just limit his critique to totalitarian states, right?
Yeah.
He also saw similar tendencies kind of emerging in democratic societies.
Yes, and this is where his work becomes, especially relevant for us today.
Okay.
Hayek was highly critical of certain British intellectuals of his time who, despite living in a democracy, were embracing these, collectivist principles.
Right.
And they seemed all too willing to sacrifice individual liberties for the sake of, what they called social engineering.
So a little bit of freedom for a little bit more, a better outcome overall.
That's how they saw it, yeah.
Okay.
But Hayek saw that as a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
A very dangerous path to go down.
Okay.
Hayek was particularly concerned with those who, they believed that sacrificing some individual liberties was a small price to pay for, greater economic equality, security, that sort of thing.
I think that's a pretty common sentiment even today.
It is. But Hayek argued that this line of thinking is fundamentally flawed.
Okay.
And many people today, believe that at least some degree of government planning is necessary to solve these complex problems.
Right, like poverty, climate change.
Exactly, yeah. And Hayek wouldn't completely disagree.
Oh.
He recognized the need for some government intervention in certain situations.
Okay.
But his core argument is that the competitive market, despite its imperfections, is far more effective at allocating resources and generating wealth than any central plan could ever be.
I see. So it's not about rejecting planning outright, but more about kind of understanding its limitations.
Yeah, precisely. And he uses this powerful analogy to kind of illustrate this point.
Okay.
He compares a centrally planned economy to trying to run a modern society using one giant calculating machine.
Okay.
The sheer complexity of a modern economy, right?
Yeah.
With countless transactions, ever-changing conditions, the dispersed knowledge of millions of individuals, it makes it impossible for any central authority to effectively manage everything.
So it's not just a matter of having like enough computing power or even clever economists. It's a more fundamental problem of information and complexity.
Exactly, yeah. Hayek argued that the information needed for sound economic decision-making, it's distributed throughout society.
Yeah.
It's in the minds of entrepreneurs, consumers, investors, and workers.
Right.
They each have their own kind of unique understanding of their needs, their local conditions, the opportunities that are available to them.
Hayek seems to be, particularly fascinated by the role of prices in a free market.
Yeah.
What is it about prices that he finds so important?
Well, for Hayek, prices are more than just numbers.
Okay.
They are signals that convey this vital information about about supply and demand, scarcity and abundance.
Right.
These seemingly random fluctuations in prices that we see in a free market, you know, they're actually a reflection of these constant adjustments and adaptations that allow an economy to respond to changing circumstances.
So rather than being a sign of chaos, these price movements are actually an essential part of what makes the market work.
Exactly. Yeah, that's precisely Hayek's argument.
Ah.
He believed that by interfering with this price mechanism, central planners disrupt this vital flow of information.
Right.
They might think they're making things more, you know, rational, more orderly,
Right.
but they're actually creating the very inefficiencies and shortages that they're trying to avoid.
It's almost like trying to steer a ship by ignoring the compass and the wind, you know.
Yeah.
You might think you're in control, but you're likely to end up, lost at sea.
A very apt analogy.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another crucial point that Hayek makes.
Okay.
He argued that the unintended consequences of central planning often create this vicious cycle. As shortages and bottlenecks emerge, planners, they feel compelled to extend their controls further.
Right. Yeah.
Leading to even greater distortions and ultimately undermining the very goals they set out to achieve.
So the quest for security through central planning can actually end up making everyone less secure in the long run.
That's Hayek's warning, yeah.
Okay.
He believed that true economic security comes from a dynamic and adaptable system, one that can respond to change and unleash the creative potential of individuals.
One of Hayek's major concerns was the impact of planning on risk-taking and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Why was he so focused on these aspects of the economy?
Well, Hayek saw risk-taking and entrepreneurship as the engines of economic growth and progress.
Sure.
In a free market, you know, those who are willing to innovate, to take risks, to create new products and services, they're rewarded.
Right.
It's this constant process of trial and error, you know.
Yeah.
Driven by individual initiative and the pursuit of profit, that leads to higher living standards for everyone.
But in a planned economy, those incentives are absent, right?
They are, yeah.
If the government is dictating what gets produced and how, there's not much room for individual, creativity and initiative.
Exactly. Hayek argued that central planning stifles innovation because it removes the rewards for success and the penalties for failure.
Right.
Why take risks when the government is calling all the shots?
Yeah.
This leads to a kind of homogenization of the economy where everything becomes, standardized and innovation stagnates.
So it seems like Hayek is making a case for individual liberty, not just on moral grounds, but also on purely practical economic grounds.
Yeah.
Freedom, in his view, is essential for a thriving and prosperous society.
Precisely. Hayek believed that economic freedom and individual liberty are two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
You can't have one without the other. A society that values individual initiative, rewards risk-taking, allows for the free flow of information and ideas, it's far more likely to generate wealth and opportunity than one that stifles individual expression and enforces conformity.
This kind of brings us back to the question we raised earlier.
Yeah.
Can material prosperity truly exist without individual freedom?
Mm-hmm.
Hayek's analysis seems to suggest that the answer is a resounding no.
It does, yeah.
Hayek's argument wasn't that every government action is inherently bad.
Right.
He believed in social safety nets, for example.
Yeah.
And he recognized the need for government to play a role in regulating certain aspects of the economy, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But he saw these interventions as supplements to, not replacements for, the fundamental mechanisms of a free market.
Yeah, he was very much in favor of markets.
So it's not a black and white issue.
No.
It's about finding the right balance.
It is. Hayek's vision was of a society that empowers individuals.
Okay.
Empowers them to make their own choices, to pursue their own goals, and to contribute to the common good in their own unique ways.
Right.
All within a framework of limited government, the rule of law, and a deep respect for individual rights.
And this resonates with, a long tradition of liberal thought.
Yeah.
That sees individual freedom as both a moral imperative and a practical necessity for a flourishing society.
Absolutely.
And it's a vision that I think remains deeply relevant today.
That does.
As we face these new challenges, that require global cooperation,
Yeah.
while also recognizing the the importance of preserving individual liberty and national sovereignty.
It's a tough balance to strike.
It is.
But I think Hayek's insights into the unintended consequences of well-intentioned policies are crucial, as we grapple with issues like climate change, economic inequality, and the rise of new technologies.
Right, right. It's fascinating how Hayek's ideas about economic freedom and individual liberty connect to his views on international order.
Right.
Given his skepticism of central planning, I imagine he had some pretty strong opinions about global governance.
He did, yeah. Hayek was deeply wary of attempts to apply central planning principles to the international realm.
Yeah.
He saw it as a recipe for conflict and a threat to national sovereignty.
So he wasn't advocating for like a world government or some kind of global economic planning authority?
No, not at all. He was very critical of what he saw as a naive idealism surrounding the idea of an all-powerful global authority,
right,
capable of justly allocating resources and dictating economic policy on a worldwide scale.
Okay.
He believed that such a system was both impractical and dangerous.
Impractical in what sense?
Well, Hayek argued that the sheer diversity of cultures, values, and economic conditions across nations makes it virtually impossible to create this one-size-fits-all plan that would work for everyone.
Right.
What might seem like a rational policy from the perspective of a global planner could be disastrous for a particular country or region with its own unique circumstances.
So Hayek's critique of international planning really echoes his concerns about central planning at the national level.
It does, yeah.
It's about recognizing the limits of human knowledge and the dangers of concentrating too much power in the hands of a few.
Exactly. Hayek believed that attempts to impose a single uniform economic order on the world would inevitably lead to conflict and resentment.
Yeah.
He also worried that it would stifle the very diversity and dynamism that drive progress and innovation.
So if Hayek was against this idea of global to central planning, what did he propose as an alternative? Was he advocating for a complete retreat from international cooperation?
Not at all. Hayek recognized the need for international cooperation to address issues that transcend national borders, like trade, security, and environmental protection.
Right.
But he believed that this cooperation should be based on a different set of principles.
It sounds like he favored a more decentralized approach, one that respects national sovereignty.
Yes.
While still fostering cooperation based on mutual agreement.
Exactly, yeah. Hayek was a strong advocate for what he called limited federalism as a model for international order.
What did he mean by that?
Well, Hayek envisioned a system where states retain their autonomy in managing their internal affairs, but they agree to abide by a set of common rules and principles governing their interactions with one another.
So it's a kind of rule-based international order.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to the way domestic legal systems function within nations.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Hayek believed that such a system, based on clearly defined rules and mechanisms for resolving disputes, would provide a more stable and peaceful international environment than one based on either, unchecked national sovereignty or an overly ambitious global authority.
It seems like Hayek's vision of international order is particularly relevant today, as we grapple with these issues like global trade, climate change, and transnational terrorism.
Yeah.
These are challenges that require international cooperation.
They do.
But finding the right balance between national sovereignty and global governance remains a very complex and contentious issue.
You've hit upon a crucial point. Hayek's work serves as a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to the challenges of international order.
Yeah.
He urges us to be cautious of these grand schemes for global governance,
right,
and to recognize the value of decentralized rule-based systems that respect national differences while fostering cooperation based on mutual consent.
This has been a truly insightful exploration of Hayek's The Road to Serfdom.
It has.
His warnings about the dangers of central planning, his insights into the workings of a free market, and his vision of a decentralized international order.
Yeah.
They offer a really valuable framework, I think, for thinking about the challenges that we face today.
I think his work is a testament to the enduring power of ideas and a reminder that the choices we make today can have, profound implications for the future of individual liberty and the kind of world we want to live in.
The road to serfdom is more than just a historical artifact. It's a roadmap for navigating the complex terrain of human freedom and social order in a world that's constantly changing.
And I think, Hayek's work really leaves us with some profound questions to ponder.
It does.
How can we balance the need for collective action with the preservation of individual liberty?
Right.
How can we foster international cooperation without sacrificing national sovereignty or succumbing to the dangers of centralized planning?
These are questions that each generation must grapple with anew.
They are.
And Hayek's insights provide a valuable guide, I think, for those seeking to chart a path toward a freer, more prosperous, and a more peaceful world.
I couldn't agree more.